On this Thursday night, vowing revenge, what Iran's new supreme leader is threatening.
It's the only weapon they really have to make the U.S. stop.
And the widening scope of Israel's bombardments on Lebanon. A holy war?
Blessed be the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle.
How Christian nationalism may be underlying the U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran. Defending and developing the North, Canada's new $35 billion plan for the Arctic. Plus, flower power.
We are seeing the best bloom in a decade.
What's fueled the rare blossoming of botanical life in Death Valley?
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Iran's new supreme leader has put out a defiant message, his first since taking over from his father, who was killed in the first days of this war. Mojtaba Khamenei vows to keep blocking the vital shipping lane, the Strait of Hormuz. 2 more tankers were hit in the Persian Gulf overnight. Iran's strategy appears to be a war of attrition, blocking marine traffic for as long as possible. Oil prices today spiked another 9% to over $100 U.S. a barrel. Prices at the pump are rising too, and the Pentagon today told Congress it spent more than $11 billion in just the first 6 days of this war. Late today, the U.S. military said one of its refueling aircraft crashed in what it describes as friendly airspace, and a rescue operation is underway. It is the 4th downed U.S. aircraft since the war began. Our coverage begins with Jackson Proskow in Washington.
Flames lit up the sky near Basra, Iraq, as Iran attacked 2 oil tankers, killing at least 1 crew member, torching any hope of rapid de-escalation in the region. Soon after, Iranian state TV read what it said was the first message from the country's new supreme leader. In it, Mojtaba Khamenei purportedly said Iran would avenge the blood of its martyrs. He threatened to attack U.S. bases in the region and said Iran would continue its blockade of the Strait of Hormuz.
The Iranians are obviously trying to target energy-related, oil-related infrastructure to cause price spikes in a year of the U.S. midterms. It's the only weapon they really have to make the U.S. stop.
Iran is being absolutely decimated. That's all I can say.
Facing the prospect of a global energy and supply chain crisis, the American president seems undeterred, even as gas prices for Americans soar. Donald Trump now claims the spike in oil prices is in fact a good thing. On social media, he wrote, "The United States is the largest oil producer in the world by far. So when oil prices go up, we make a lot of money."
Most people say it's already been won. It's just a question of when. When do we stop?
So long as the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, it's not clear the U.S. can stop. U.S. Central Command says it has struck approximately 6,000 targets in Iran and shows no sign of slowing down. Iran's new leader is clear he will not bend so long as his country is under attack.
We're now talking about a protracted war. We're now talking about a long war. And in this long war, the United States is going to be at a significant disadvantage.
The Strait of Hormuz is now a pinch point for both sides, a pressure Iran can exploit to squeeze the U.S. and its allies. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
This war is catastrophic for children. 10 days into it, more than 1,100 children have been reported injured or killed in the conflict. That's according to UNICEF. At least 200 children have died in Iran, 91 in Lebanon, 4 in Israel, and 1 in Kuwait. UNICEF warns those numbers will climb as the attacks intensify and spread. The agency says hundreds of thousands of children have been displaced and millions are now out of school. The U.S. and Israeli attacks have engulfed Lebanon, and Israel today expanded its ferocious bombing campaign, pounding the capital, Beirut, and forcing more than 800,000 people to flee their homes. Lebanese authorities estimate more than 600 people have been killed there. Israel is intent on dismantling Hezbollah, Iran's most powerful proxy, which keeps launching missiles at Israel, and Israeli ground forces are advancing. Redmond Shannon reports on where this all might be leading.
The people of Lebanon know when they see and hear this. Hezbollah rockets fired from Lebanon at Israel It will soon be followed by this. Israeli airstrikes pummeling strongholds of the Iran-backed militant group in Lebanon. Many innocent civilians have also been killed this month, including almost 100 children. 8 people died in this Israeli airstrike on the Beirut seafront Wednesday, just meters from tents housing some of the hundreds of thousands of people displaced by the conflict. Children and the elderly are in these tents. How can Israel justify this? Asks this man. Hezbollah was severely weakened by Israel in 2024. Its leader Hassan Nasrallah killed, and thousands of its members injured by exploding pagers. And just this month, Lebanon formally outlawed Hezbollah's militant activities after the group fired at Israel to avenge the killing of Iran's supreme leader. Lebanese President Michel Aoun, who met with the Canadian ambassador Wednesday, has vowed to disarm the Shia Muslim militant group. A huge task for Lebanon's army, historically compromised by the country's sectarian divides.
Unfortunately, while they made progress, it wasn't fully completed.
David Hale is a former US ambassador to Lebanon. He worries that Israel's renewed airstrikes and its re-invasion of southern Lebanon could be counterproductive. Israel's defense minister said Thursday he warned President Aoun that if Lebanon can't control Hezbollah, Israel will take the territory and do the job itself. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Canada has pledged nearly $38 million in humanitarian aid for civilians in Lebanon. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand says the aid recognizes the enormous strain Lebanese people are facing.
Because of this conflict, families are suffering and are displaced. Food and clean water insecurity is rising. Hospitals and critical health care infrastructure are closing.
Anand says the funds will help provide food, medical and health services, plus shelter and clean water. Prime Minister Mark Carney was asked today about a report in the newspaper La Presse that a Canadian military facility in Kuwait, known as Camp Canada, was struck by Iran over 10 days ago. It's on the Ali Al Salem Air Base, which hosts American and Canadian troops. Satellite images captured on March 1st show damaged roofs and structures at the base.
The members of the Canadian Forces are all safe and sound. We are not engaged in these actions of the U.S. and Israel. We're not engaged in offensive actions.
Carney did not answer a question about why his government waited until now to confirm the attack happened. The Canadian base has been used in an ongoing operation against the so-called Islamic State for over a decade. Mark Carney was in Yellowknife to announce Canada is taking another step to strengthen the country's defense, this time focused on the Arctic. He unveiled a $35 billion plan to prepare the North for more extensive military operations. Carney describes it as a generational investment to link the military defense of the North with the need to unlock the region's vast critical mineral deposits. David Aiken explains.
This historic day has been a long time coming.
The centerpiece of Prime Minister Mark Carney's defense and development strategy in the Arctic is a $32 billion commitment to modernize military bases in Yellowknife, Inuvik, Iqaluit, and at Five Wing Goose Bay in Labrador. Ottawa will also spend $2.7 billion to beef up Canada's military presence at Whitehorse, Resolute, Cambridge Bay, and Rankin Inlet.
We're taking full responsibility for defending our sovereignty.
One defense expert says this appears to be a response to Donald Trump's saber-rattling about Greenland.
This amount of money, multiple tens of billions of dollars on military bases in the Arctic, that's an announcement that's designed to be heard by President Donald Trump.
Carney also announced new high-priority referrals to his government's Major Projects Office for $11 billion in infrastructure to support new mining development.
This is a generational plan to build and connect the North, to bring security, prosperity, and opportunity to workers and families.
These projects include an 800-kilometer all-season highway from Yellowknife to Inuvik, a new all-season road from the Northwest Territories to a deep-water port at Grays Bay in Nunavut, and the expansion of the Tolston Hydro Plant.
We're saying, as a country, we've got this. I mean, we're going to take care of Arctic security. We're going to get those critical minerals for you. We're on your side. Leave us alone.
Carney now heads to Norway, where he will observe a NATO training exercise. David Aiken, Global News, Ottawa.
In Michigan, a suspect is dead after ramming his vehicle into a synagogue near Detroit. Police say the suspect drove through the doors and down a hallway at Temple, Israel. Security guards engaged in gunfire with him, and one of them was injured. The vehicle caught fire, and large plumes of smoke could be seen coming from the building. Police found what appeared to be a large amount of explosives in the vehicle. Michigan's governor has condemned the attack as an act of anti-Semitism, which has surged around the world after the conflicts in the Middle East. In Ottawa, the federal government has tabled a new version of its lawful access legislation. It would give police new powers to pursue online data for investigative purposes. The original version of the bill was widely condemned by civil rights advocates and opposition parties who warned it would have violated charter rights. Jillian Piper is in Ottawa, and she walks us through the changes. Jillian.
Donna, the so-called lawful access bill would allow law enforcement to ask telecom companies if they provide services to a Canadian who they have reason to suspect has committed a crime without needing a warrant.
This proposed legislation allow us to advance our investigations where previously there was no pathway forward.
Police say this new bill will help in a wide range of cases, including online child exploitation, extremism, and hate-motivated crimes.
The critical part of this proposed bill is timely access to data.
The new laws would not give police access to an individual's web browsing history or social media activity. And unlike a previous version of this government's bill, which received so much backlash it was eventually removed, the measures would not include medical information.
This new legislation, Bill C-22, balances the needs of law enforcement with the privacy and civil rights that Canadians demand.
But the Canadian Civil Liberties Association still thinks that balance is off, as the public safety minister could order a company to store data on Canadians for up to a year.
This creates not just significant privacy concerns, but also cybersecurity concerns.
Ottawa says the onus is on companies to secure the data, but this national security expert says they should be able to opt out if they cannot safely comply.
What I think we do need to be concerned about is those smaller service providers, ensuring that they have the resources they need to understand the technical risks that they may be introducing.
This bill does not include any duty for tech companies to report concerning activity, Donna, and the federal government says details like deciding which service providers need to comply will be specified in later regulations.
Okay, Jillian Piper in Ottawa, thanks. Immigration application coming up, how at least one child of an Iranian leader has applied to live in Canada. The Iranian regime has long portrayed many Western countries, particularly the U.S. and its allies, as hostile enemies. And yet the children of some of Iran's most outspoken and hardline leaders live, study, and travel in those Western countries. And as Jeff Semple reports, at least one of them has applied to immigrate to Canada.
Iran's parliamentary speaker, Mohammad Bagheri Ghalibaf, is one of the highest-ranking, hardest members of the regime. This week, he's rejected calls for a ceasefire and called on the Iranian people to take to the streets to defend the regime. But if they do, his own son won't be among them. Global News has learned Ghalibaf's son, Eshaq, has for years been living in the West and even applied to move to Canada. Eshaq's Canadian immigration application shows he skipped his mandatory military service in Iran. Instead, he's been jet-setting around the world, with stops in Paris, Milan, and Amsterdam, and studying at an Australian university. Eshaq applied twice to come to Canada, most recently in 2019, and complained that the federal government was taking too long to approve his application. The delay has a direct impact on many aspects of my life, he wrote in a federal court affidavit. This has cost me a huge loss of money, he said, and an enormous psychological burden on my everyday life.
Those revelations about Ghalibaf's son are hard to stomach for Iranians, including those who've risked their lives to flee the country, crossing the border here to Turkey, for example. And Iranians note that Ghalibaf's son isn't the only one.
It is quite common.
At this anti-government protest in Tehran in January, demonstrators, whose faces are blurred for their protection, could be heard chanting, "Our kids are in prison, their kids are in Canada." Multiple top regime officials reportedly have children living in the West, including Iran's foreign minister and the secretary of its Supreme National Security Council.
The list goes on and on and on.
The new supreme leader himself reportedly owns numerous multi-million-dollar mansions in the West, including this $60 million home in London, England.
They come and say, "Death to America, we are fighting against the evil Western world." But what about yourself? What about your son, your daughter, living in the best houses in the West? The West that you ask us to send death to them.
This is the biggest state sponsor of terror in the world.
The judge reviewing Esha's application to come to Canada noted that Pierre Poilievre's office made repeated inquiries to immigration officials on his behalf. Poilievre's spokesperson did not respond to our request for comment. The Liberal government eventually rejected Esha's application in 2024 after Canadian-Iranian activists launched this petition against him. Esha is now reportedly living in Australia, and activists there have launched a petition too. Jeff Semple, Global News, Vaughan, Turkey.
From prayers in the Oval Office to the Army barracks, how much is Christian nationalism playing a role in the U.S. attacks on Iran? The Trump administration has come up with multiple reasons why it, along with Israel, attacked Iran, from regime change to getting rid of Iran's missiles and its nuclear capability. But there are some army commanders in the U.S. who have reportedly been invoking extremist Christian rhetoric, framing this as a holy war and using apocalyptic language and Old Testament scripture. Eric Sorensen explains how, for some, this war is rooted in biblical prophecies.
We ask God to protect.
Suggesting God is on our side is not new.
We trust that, with his help, the men and women of the armed forces will prevail.
But U.S. President Trump,
lifting up the arms of our president,
who prayed with Christian leaders in the Oval Office after starting the war, is seen by some as anointed by God. Influential pastor John Hagee links the war with Iran to biblical prophecy leading to Armageddon and says that Trump is the one to stop Iran.
Other presidents did not have that courage. Donald Trump has that courage, thank God.
Pete Hegseth, Trump's Secretary of Defense, holds prayer services at the Pentagon and read Old Testament scripture at a briefing this week.
Blessed be the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle.
The Military Religious Freedom Foundation says it's received more than 200 complaints from military members that commanders are using religion, in some cases biblical prophecy, to justify the mission.
Their commanders view it in their version of Christian nationalism, that this was all foretold in the biblical book of Revelation.
Washington has long painted Iran as a country of religious extremists.
Iran is run by lunatics, religious fanatic lunatics.
Iran is a theocratic authoritarian regime, but conflicts historically are more bloody when one or both sides use religion to rationalize the fight.
The idea of trying to have this be our God versus your God, again, past is prologue. That has never ended well.
To many, this war is really about oil and power in the Middle East. Religion tries to inject superior morality.
It may be used by both sides to justify certain acts of really savage violence. It actually may make long-term peace harder to solve because it roots the conflict in points of ideology and belief, which may not be actually what's the driving force behind some of the conflict.
I was saved by God to make America great again.
What does Trump believe? Some interpret the war as a stepping stone to biblical end times. For Trump, could the price of oil be the stepping stone to losing interest and shutting down this war? Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
Next, life in Death Valley, why the desert is in full bloom. At a time when the news can feel heavy, we thought we would end tonight with a story about unexpected beauty. California's Death Valley is best known for being deathly hot and quite barren. But right now, it is bursting with color. Mike Armstrong explains why the hottest and driest place on our continent is blooming with life.
It's not unusual for tourists to pull over for pictures in Death Valley, but it's normally to get photos of the lack of life. Well, not right now.
So this year we are seeing the best bloom in a decade, where normally when visitors come to the park, they might see a field of gravel here.
In place of bare rock and dust, much of Death Valley is carpeted in wildflowers. It's called a super bloom. Now, what causes it? Well, back in November, the valley set a record for rainfall. It got 43 millimeters, about the amount it usually gets in a full year. The local flowers take advantage of the water when they get it and adapt, germinating during the colder winter months.
They'll stay very small plants for the first several months, and then when the right conditions come in February, start growing these bloom stalks when everything is perfect for a bloom.
Now, Death Valley earned its name. It's one of the harshest and hottest places on Earth. In the summer, temperatures can go past 50 degrees Celsius. Seeing the valley like this is special.
I'm a florist by trade. I've been out taking pictures so I could send it to my friends who are also florists.
I came here like a year ago for spring break as well with my family. There were no flowers here, but now it's just absolutely gorgeous.
It's amazing. It's the last time we've been here, it was all burned, burned from the sun.
Well, the show won't last for long. Within a few weeks, the heat will return and the flowers will dry out. But for now, in a valley named for death, there is a short season of life. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
And that is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Rothesay, New Brunswick. Thanks for watching. Colleen Christie will be at the Anchor Desk tomorrow, and I will see you again next week. Bye-bye.